All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 here of South by Southwest. We are here to talk about storytelling in sports and rewriting the narrative. So I imagine if you're in this session, you probably ever work in sports, you're a big sports fan, or just thought the four of us would be really fun to hang out with at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which hopefully is true. So we appreciate you all being here. We all know the sports industry is rapidly changing, whether that's from technology, player movement, analytics, NIL, the transfer portal, sports gambling. The industry's probably seeing more change right now than it has, at any time in the past in general. So it's an exciting time. It's also an intimidating time. And that's why I think it's more important now than ever before for organizations to be able to connect with their fan base through their brand and through storytelling instead of just relying on the results on the field or the players on the roster. And we've got a great panel of people here today to do that. Lamont, Buford, Hewit, and Jonny Greco, who we'll get to all meet here shortly. They've been involved in some of the biggest and I think coolest storytelling experiences that sports has seen in the past few years. So we'll have some great stories to share with them. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first here, headshot format, because we are at a sports panel here. My name's Ryan Pritt. I'm the president and co-founder of Pritt Entertainment Group. We are a creative agency and we specialize in video production. So for the last 16 years, we've worked with teams across the country, especially on the video side, of creating some really cool in-stadium and in-arena experiences to help tell brand stories and introduce them in a lot of cases. I've been lucky enough to work with everybody on this panel directly and create with them many times, which has been super fun. So Lamont and Jonny and I worked together in Seattle on the start of the new Seattle Kraken franchise in the NHL on their first open, which was a really cool immersive experience, and also their whole in-arena graphics package. Also in 2021, that same year, I got to work with Tara closely on the Cleveland Guardians rebrand when they changed over from the Indians to the Guardians. I've been a part of that organization for a long time. As you can see, I also was the in-park host there for a little while. So that organization definitely meant a lot to me, and it was really cool to be a part of that project as well, working with Tara on capturing footage for that brand launch, which a lot of you may have seen, and Tara got to work with Tom Hanks on, which is pretty cool. And then for many years, I got to work with Jonny as well in Las Vegas with the Vegas Golden Knights. You've probably all seen their crazy, wild, off-the-rails opens that they've done there, and we helped put those together many a times out there in Vegas. So that was really cool, and Jonny was a part of creating one of the in-arena experiences I think most people would agree has kind of revolutionized the industry and storytelling as a whole. So it's a great panel. Fortunate to be here with a bunch of co-creators. And before we get started, I'll let them tell a little bit about themselves. So Lamont, there you are. Why don't you take it away?
Wait a minute, you didn't tell them how we work together.
We work together on some wild projects, not only in Seattle, but also in Arizona. And that one has a story that we could go on for an entire day that involves a cartel and all kinds of stuff.
True story. For another day, another session, we could tell. Good morning, everybody. I'm thankful to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel, to hang out with these awesome people. My name is Lamont Buford. I have a really long title up there. I just like to say that I am part of the fun team with the Seattle Kraken. And our job is honestly to tell stories, but it's also to just help those who come to games, who come to any part of a Kraken event to just have fun and forget about everything else. So that's what I like to envision myself as and our team. And I've had an opportunity to be in sports now for quite some time. It's been very, very rewarding and very fulfilling to be able to do this for over 2 decades. I had a chance to work with 3 of the individuals up here pretty intimately. Maybe one day there's an opportunity to work with Tara to do some cool things. But just excited to be here and got some great stories. So let's do it.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Tara, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Tara Hewit, Director of Marketing for Charlotte FC. I've been in the sports world for a decade. In my former pre-sports life, started with the airline, so very big industry shift there. But I was with the Cleveland Guardians for 9 years, and I think I crammed about as much as possible into 9 years that you could. So started with some massive ballpark renovations. We then went to a 7-game World Series, which we don't need to talk about the ending of that World Series. We then, I project managed the All-Star Game when it was hosted in Cleveland. The team then had a 22-game win streak, which was the largest win streak in modern day MLB history. And then I topped off my career there with a name change. So it was a wild 9 years with the Guardians. And now I am excited to be with Charlotte FC, so one of the newer clubs with MLS, which has been a blast to kind of like make that league shift and club shift to go from one of the oldest clubs and one of the oldest leagues in our country to now one of the newest. So excited to be here. Look forward to it.
Me too.
Jonny, you're up.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonny Greco. I am the Chief Energy Officer for Shine Entertainment. What does that mean? Still figuring it out. I had 25 years in pro sports working with different teams and different leagues. Insanely lucky to work around some of the greatest talent on the planet. And we're here to talk about storytelling in sports, but storytelling is so much bigger than just sports. And working in sports, you don't think you're getting to work with Tom Hanks or Jerry Bruckheimer or Andy Jassy from Amazon, like some pretty crazy stories that we've had. But we have been able to work with the John Cenas at WWE and the LeBron James at the Cleveland Cavaliers, and been surrounded by incredible people who understand the value of storytelling, the value of creation. Kind of as it's been alluded to, I had a chance to get to work with the Vegas Golden Knights, incredible stories there. We were able to take risks. We were able to fail forward. We were able to try crazy things. Unfortunately, with storytelling in sports, a lot of the success is predicated on the team winning. And in this case, Vegas did, so we were lucky there. But I would say a lot of us who've worked in sports, we've also worked for last place teams, or when LeBron, makes his decision to move his talents to South Beach and you're the last place team for the Cleveland Cavaliers, you value the show a little bit more than you do when he's there. So a lot of things that we're going to get into today. Just thank you, everybody, for being here. We're really excited about this, and we can kind of just get going.
Yeah, definitely. So I think if it is a discussion about storytelling, first question has got to be, why is storytelling so important?
I mean, I'd say storytelling is so important because I relate it to food because I like to eat. And
Who likes to eat? Raise your hand.
Eating is important, and so you want to be able to consume something. And for me, like, storytelling is just like either making a sandwich or a cake. It's you got a lot of ingredients that you're gonna put in. You got some spices, you got some condiments, but in the end, the goal is that you want to have something that's edible, something that is consumable, that tastes good, and that gives you that wow. And so storytelling, to me, I think is important that you want to try to do that for others who are trying to consume that story, or when they come in to see the things that you're doing. That you want them to have that wow moment. Like, everybody here can attest to, like, that piece of cake that you've bitten into that gives you that on the first bite, that yep. That's why I kind of equate storytelling, and that's why I think it's important, because you want to always be able to consume something.
Definitely. And Jonny, I know that you, for instance, are a big movie guy, and Lamont equates it to building food, but I know you think of it a lot the same way as building a movie out too.
I do. I think, I went to film school and early on realized that it is all storytelling, and you do the research and you realize, like, storytelling's been around for 30,000 years. It's not a new thing. Sometimes it feels cliche to be like, well, tell a good story and it'll work. But it's a visceral connection we feel, right? And there's storytelling in front of 100,000 people at WrestleMania, but there's also storytelling when you're one-on-one with your boss. And it's like, I need to tell a story as to why I deserve a promotion. I need to tell a story as to why this idea could get pushed forward. And if I tell a story well, it just might get pushed through, and it might, change lives in some cases. So I have always equated it to film, and the big difference in sports entertainment is, in film, you write the script, you have it, you're ready to go, you get on set, you shoot things, the actors know their lines, and you kind of get it close to what you think it's going to be. In sports, you write the script, you have the lights, the camera, the music. but your protagonist, your hero shows up and they don't know the lines. They don't know the script. So from our side, it's all improv. We have the lights ready to go if they do this, but they might do this. He might score 48. He might go 0 for 17. That we have to change and be super improvisational on the fly with what we do. So you're not creating a show. You're creating like a whole bunch of options with contingencies, and you got to be responsive and react, and you have to listen. So it is like film. It is like movies. There's good guys and bad guys, and we can talk more about that. But it comes down to building out that frame and just being ready to rock. But improv way more than like traditional movies, for sure.
Yeah. Now, Tara, for you, because you talked about being a part of that Guardians rebrand, Jonny spoke a little bit of how storytelling works in that live environment, or when you're, trying to capture things with a player who just shows up to a media day and truly hasn't seen scripts and things like that. That Guardians rebrand, obviously, a lot went into that. Tell us a little bit about how did you guys tell that story from beginning to end, because there was a lot more thought and planning and pre-calculation that had to go into it.
Yeah, it was, I could probably talk for a good 3 hours about that rebrand in and of itself, but it is a very special moment in sports because, like Jonny said, sports are just completely unpredictable, and you don't often have the opportunity to control the narrative and to actually tell a story that you have kind of full control over. And I think that's what made that rebrand so special and that's why we were fortunate enough to have a small team of very dedicated and passionate individuals to take the time and take the thought, and so much discussion went into, not only like the name itself, but how do we want it to come to life? And, there was a lot of fan sensing and listening to our fans and knowing that a lot of people were not pleased with us making the decision to even change the name. And so I think we wanted to be really intentional once we knew that we had the name Guardians and that was legally viable, which you want to talk about unpredictable legal options in the sports naming market.
IP, baby.
Yeah. But once we knew we had the Guardians name, I think all of us then started to talk about like, okay, how do we want to tell this story so that we're making sure our fans know we're not wiping out 100 years of our history. This is an evolution. It's not something completely new. And so we were really intentional about keeping our colors the same, making sure we had a script horizontal word mark that felt very similar to Indians as it did to Guardians. And then when it came to the unveil itself, was a lot of talk about, this is not something that we want to come from a stuffy press conference. We don't want it to come from a press release. We want the first time that our fans hear that name to make an impact and to mean something to them. And so was able to actually I was born and raised in Cleveland. So to be able to, I essentially just wrote my love letter to the city and to the team and how much it has meant to me, and have seen the city change and the team change. And so I just kind of wrote it all out. And then we were talking about, okay, well, who's gonna deliver this now? And we wanted it to come from a person who has a connection to Cleveland. So we had a whole list of who's any Cleveland musician or artist, and we knew Tom Hanks kind of credits Cleveland for giving him his start. Total long shot. We're we're never getting Tom Hanks, but we'll try. We'll make the ask. But otherwise, let's talk to anybody else, like Steve Harvey or Machine Gun Kelly, anybody. And then lo and behold, Tom was like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. And then from there, everything just fell into place. Once we got his voiceover, the whole video just came together. And I think it just kind of showed when you have a group of, people that are really passionate about something and it really comes from the heart, those are the stories that can break through. And I think not taking it lightly when you have the time to write a story in sports, because it doesn't happen often.
One of the coolest things Tara shared with us, and you could do a short version of this, but how his voiceover was actually recorded, right? We've worked with larger budgets, smaller budgets, and sometimes we have a lot of money to do something and it doesn't always hit. And sometimes you don't have a lot of money and it hits, right? So why is that? It comes down to the story. Does it connect with your heart, right? Disney would call it, does it create a spark in the heart? And so you've got Woody from Toy Story, and you're doing this with Tom Hanks, and story over sexy, because you didn't have the strongest recording equipment, right? As far as how you guys recorded this powerful voiceover.
Yeah, this is the behind the scenes of the story behind the story. So when Tom Hanks was like, yes, I'll record it, I'm traveling on a yacht around Greece, so I'm nowhere near a recording studio, so I can do it on my phone. And we're like, great, we'll take it, fine, just do it. And so he recorded it on his cell phone, sent it to us, got blocked by our firewall. So had to figure out a way to get the file through. So yeah, it was making a very low budget voiceover work. But yeah, it was
That's awesome. I just
very
love that.
special.
When you focus on production value first over story, I think we miss the mark sometimes. And especially if you're talking about like college sports and minor league, sometimes the budgets just aren't as big. Right. And it's tricky, right? When you hear people like, oh, this person worked the Stanley Cup final or he did. It's like, yeah, you have more money, but the truth is at the core of it, if we remember the DNA of what we're doing, it is that story. And you can create some amazing things on phones, you know? I mean, which is, I just think it's cool. I wanted to bring it up.
I still think one of the best productions that I've ever done was actually tearing up a book, using a camera to just capture some images and putting it up. Spent less than, I say less than $500 on it, on the whole thing. And it was one of the most rewarding, one of the ones that got the most pub. So it's been cool. I like that.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah.
Terry, you touched on something that I think is kind of interesting, and I know we've all experienced it sometime or another, and I imagine a lot of you have as well, is a lot of times with that Guardians piece, you had the unique advantage of you were telling the story of a team and a city that you grew up in and you knew. A lot of us have moved around places or have worked with teams across the country where, you didn't have that experience of growing up in those neighborhoods and things like that. I think this is probably a good question for anyone who wants to take it, but how have you guys found ways to be able to not only embrace those areas, but also tell their stories in a way that is authentic to fans who have grown up there when maybe you've only been there for a year or two and they were then being put in charge of telling the story? I know even for us at PEG, when we work on opens, there's times we may not get involved in the project until a month before, and it's how do you figure out how to be authentic and learn so quickly to make sure that people can't see through the fact that it may not have been a local who put that together.
It's like don't do the Wikipedia version of whatever city you're in. Like, oh, you moved to Seattle. Cool, what are you gonna do? And I remember Lamont and I, when we were doing like research early on, we talked to UW, we talked to the Seahawks, we talked to the Mariners, we talked to like people at the grocery store. We're like, what matters to you? Because it isn't just about the salmon toss, which did make sense for us to use. It's not just about the Space Needle and Nirvana. It's how those things are threaded in there. I remember moving to Vegas from Cleveland. That was quite a shift. You go to Vegas and it's like, all right, create a great show in Vegas. What's a great Vegas sports show for the first ever sports franchise? It's like, I don't know. We talked about this, a slot machine mascot? No. Like, do you name, do you have a jack of spades or whatever? Like, no, because we started to just dig deep, right? Start with where they were and Ted Lasso said it, but it may have come from Walt Whitman. Like, be curious, not judgmental, right? So you move to Las Vegas and you're like, oh man, blackjack and roulette and showgirl, that'll be the show. And then you talk to the people, the heart of the city, which isn't on a Wikipedia page. It's by like engaging with humans. You start to learn what really was authentic to them. And then we started to build that out. And there were elements of a lot of those things, the traditional strip things from Vegas that did come into play and did resonate with those people. But when you are authentic in the storytelling, it just resonates with them, and they'll be your cheerleaders and they'll want to watch the story because it's a big responsibility. Like your hometown team rewriting that narrative and like that's indelible forever. Like it's this thing that happens. And so it's different when you come in from the outside because you can't front on the city. That's what they said about Seattle. Like you can't front on a city because there's people who live here who've raising their children here. It's a community. You got to do the work to tell that story in a good way.
And I think authenticity is probably, to me, the most important part of storytelling. People can see through when you're just trying to push a storyline that just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And I think it does take, especially like in today's, especially sports and content, like the churn of content is just constant. And so to tell an impactful story, it does take some time and it takes that research to immerse yourself. And I'm kind of learning that now, being fairly new to Charlotte FC and to the Charlotte area, kind of like in my research phase. But at the end of the day, like I am a diehard soccer fan. So I feel like I can tap into, you can still speak from I think all of us up here are huge sports fans,
Yeah.
so we can still speak on that level, but it just is being intentional and not, just kind of putting something that doesn't feel authentic out
It's
there.
tricky too because we got to move fast, right? Content creators in the social world, something just happened. What are we going to do? Oh, this guy hit this game-winning shot from 80 feet. Max Strus just did it for the Cavs. We need to activate now. We can't take time to tell the story. So being able, it's similar to the improv in the live event space. Do we have the tools or the ingredients to the sandwich to be able to move nimbly?
Yep.
And if you have that North Star about what your why is, who you're creating for, it does allow you the ability to move fast. Because not every story gets that long runway that we wish we could have. Sometimes, something just broke, we got to pivot, and then genius happens because of it, because you're prepared for it.
Yeah.
How have you guys had success in getting a creative team to keep your eyes on that North Star? Especially in sports, like there's so much that changes so rapidly over the course of a season, and every single game has the potential for a moment to happen, an injury to happen, something that literally changes everything that you've planned. How do you keep the creative vision consistent throughout the full year? Lamont, I know you've had a few different teams that you've worked with NHL-wise, from Arizona to Seattle. What have you seen success with that?
I think it always starts in the beginning. You set the base. You have to know what is your brand, and know what the end goal is, and then from there you can figure out everything else that takes place in the middle. And it's one of those things where when you go in, like we mentioned, so many things can happen, but you can't always go with everything that happens. And as long as you know your brand, that's where you can kind of stay within those guardrails and go that way. So you're not just going grandiose, because there's like mentioning, there's so many things that are taking place. You can be way over here and your brand is way over here. So you got to just kind of stay within that lane, those guardrails.
Yeah, I think having that brand identity is such a pivotal foundation in sports, because it does allow you to make those quick decisions, and it also allows you, like, how do we react to something? Are we do we have a brand that allows us to be edgy, or are we more traditional? And I think that then drives, a lot of your voice and allows you to be able to quickly put things together.
Yeah, I remember when I had the honor to work at WWE for 6 years and travel the world and work with, again, like I said, the Ric Flairs and the Hulk Hogans and pinch me moment kind of things, and Undertaker, right? We talked about some of these. The thing that was always consistent, whether they were in Austin, Texas, or Tokyo, or South America, they stayed true to their brand, right? In WWE, they're all about characters, first off, but the number one character for WWE is the WWE Universe. They've named their fans. It's like this allowance. I see you nodding, you're a WWE guy. Like, they absolutely will not apologize for fans first. We're doing this for the fans. They will take risks. They will fail forward. They will try things. They're also unapologetic there. But at the core of what they do, they know that it is story. And at the core of great stories, it's so simple. And I had 15 years in sports when I went to WWE, and I got my creative teeth kicked in at WWE because I thought I knew what I knew, and I was wrong. But they simplify it. It's not a complicated formula. It's good versus evil, right? Tall versus short, light versus dark. They do these things with the wardrobe. They do these things with how they make these grandiose entrances. They do these before a match that you may not be following storylines. If you tune in right now there, you flip it on, you're like, oh, here's a backstory piece of why this girl hates this girl, and let's go. So let's bring out the bad character. Dark lights, moody music. They come out and they're angry, and I'll even show you. They'll do this thing where they'll come up, and the mean person will, if you have a sign, they'll grab it and they'll rip it, and they won't give you high fives, and they'll be doing this. Meanwhile, that's the heel, that's the bad guy. The baby face comes out, it's like, hey everybody, high five, and everybody's dancing and celebrating. It's such a different experience. You're kissing babies, the baby face angle. And then one thing I learned that I thought was super cool, because they would do this once they get in the ring. It's all about the entrance, and they would, let's pretend this is a ring. We're gonna wrestle. We're gonna change
a
this.
wrestler.
So the
life.
bad guy, you talk about the North Star, right? The bad guy goes up and looks at the audience, looks down on him, does this. But the good guy's right there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, bring the heat. But you're booing at me. The good guy's there. If I'm the bad guy, I'm not worried about him, because you know what good guys don't do? They don't stab people in the back. Now, if I'm the good guy and I'm John Cena and I'd see him do this, and he'd come up and he'd be doing this and making sure he's connecting with the audience. Few people on planet Earth are better at this, but he's Randy Orton, he's a heel. He may stab him in the back. So he has to be paying attention to that. So it's a very basic premise, but I remember being there. I'm like, that's it. So whether they're in, like I said, South Africa or Newark, New Jersey, they stay core to the principles of the brand, of the character, and they won't deviate from that. So the North Star is clear, and it allows all the things we just said. I told you guys I was going to stand up because I was getting excited. Just help tell that story. Thanks, Sean.
Well, that's a great example, though, of an organization where the leadership does understand storytelling.
Oh, man,
and, we don't have to name names to anybody here, but I'm sure we have all been involved in projects where maybe leaders have a more traditional way, especially in sports, of running marketing or what they expect a brand to be. How have you guys succeeded in overcoming those kind of situations when you've run into them?
I'm still winded, so you guys got
I think figuring out what your leadership does, like what resonates with them or how to kind of like get their buy-in. So this is no like surprise, but the Guardians are very like analytical minded. So, okay, let me figure out a way that I can like track the impact of this story. Let me figure out a way that I can weave in some analytics so that I can prove to leadership like there is strength in this and this is resonating with fans and this is helping build our brand. So I think it's like trying to figure out how can I get leadership on board? What is the language I need to speak to them, or what do I know that they're going to pick up on that I can help kind of like make the case to tell a story? And also being flexible enough, I think as storytellers, like sometimes you will need to change your story, and sometimes like, not being too attached to it, but also like making sure that you stay true to like what is at the core of you're trying to get across. But if leadership comes back, then, okay, well, we could adjust here as long as this stays, and figuring out where you're okay making concessions.
And I like to ask leaders, what's their end goal?
Yeah.
Like if we know what the end goal is, then we can create from there. But, some organizations that I've been a part of, the end goal was, I just want tickets. I just want butts and seats.
Yeah, revenue.
I was like, okay, all right, well, I don't really have to tell a story. I just need to play some music, throw some lights up, and people are going to come in and have a good time. Is that how I like to tell stories? No, but that's their end goal. Then there's others who want people to, again, food analogy, they want people to have that first bite moment when they come to their game so that they want to come back over and over and over to consume that. And so that's where you get to tell those stories. And I think one thing that done it forever, but kind of learned it being in Seattle with talking to the Andy Jazzies and some of the folks from Amazon. It's they literally set up, and I'm giving insider secrets, so I'm sorry. They literally set up to like, you have all these ideas, but literally it's start at the back, all the way to the point of like when you're doing your Q&As, how you want people to react, and then work your way back.
The PR FAQ, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal practice for any business in any spot is working backwards. What are the questions people are going to ask us about this new app? What are questions going to ask us about the rebrand? Why'd you use this logo? Just literally rip it to pieces as like a mean press would kind of, and then work backwards to sort of answer those and have those answers as they roll, which I love. When I think of kind of what both of you just said, it makes me think of Maria Montessori, who invented the Montessori way of thinking. And her line is, start with where they are, not where you want them to be. And so when you work with different teams or leadership, start with where they are. Because you could come from, again, a wild organization that really takes risks. And again, I'll reference just the WWE space where we'll do this, we'll try this. Then you go to another place, like you can't assume that they're starting in the same spot. Right. It's not more or less. It's just there's different vibrations that you have. So really doing the research, really listening and paying attention to what they're asking for, what the reaction they want and the goals are. And I've taken that as like it's in my ethos of like, just start with where they are, not with where you want them to be, and then develop them to get there potentially. But it just helps with different types of leadership and different types of creatives that you may work with to get them up to different speeds as you roll. So,
and when we are able to tell those stories the way we want to and the way that we're proud of, I think an interesting question. Lamont, I'll start with you, and then we can kind of go on the row. What has been the most impactful, like throw out fame or attention or virality on social media, anything like that? get rid of all that. What is your favorite storytelling piece that you've gotten to work on, and why did it work?
It's been quite a few. One though, just because we're here and it's you, my favorite piece honestly has to be what we did in Arizona. For a variety of reasons, there's so many stories we can tell from that. But I think the big thing though was that those who follow hockey, those who know about the Arizona Coyotes, that franchise has been kind of up and down. And people have always said hockey can't succeed in the desert. But they've been there for over 20 years, over 25 years. And the one thing that I really wanted to tell the story of is like hockey can exist in the desert, even though it's hot. You can have ice there. And I think the part that it was just one day just kind of summer sitting around, we're throwing a whole bunch of things up on the wall, and we're just throwing all these grandiose ideas that were way outside of brand, But one thing that was, somebody said something about just, it's always hot. Like you can put an ice cube out there and the way it melts, but like hockey, your ice can't melt. And I was like, okay, well, how can we show that even in the heat, the ice is there? And I remember I wrote some stuff down, and then we had probably like a month before it's time for the season. Don't have a lot of time to really get a grandiose open built. But I was like, I know there's this guy who could help tell the story. And I actually called Jonny. I said, Jonny, I'm trying to tell this story. I didn't tell him what the story was. I said, but I'm trying to tell this story, and I need someone to help me create this story.
I got a guy.
And he's like, I got a guy. Call Ryan. And I called Ryan, and I said, Ryan, this is what I got. I said, we're in the middle of a desert. You got this person that's walking around with a hockey stick, and he's just gonna carve out an ice rink in the middle of the desert. And I want ice to resonate out of that. And Ryan was like, ooh, I like that. And then we riffed for a little bit, and next thing you know, magic happened.
Yeah, filmed it a week later, I think.
A week later, yes. And it was, that to me has been one of the most rewarding and fulfilling pieces that I've done. And I've done a lot. Like you can see that photo that was up there before with the Shane Doan night retirement. That's still one that like pops up quite a bit, and that's very fulfilling. But that I do have to say was the open that we did in the middle of the desert.
That's awesome. I'm honored to hear that. Tara, how about you?
So I think mine, I clearly peaked at Tom Hanks. But for me, I think my favorite stories are the ones that like make you remember, because the sports industry is very crazy, and it's just, you're constantly going and thinking about the next match or game. And so for me, I love being able to tell like the fan stories, and especially the ones that are super sentimental, because it just reminds you of like the power of sports. And so we had one fan at the Guardians who was a paraplegic, and it was his goal to visit. He came to every single Guardians home game.
Nab.
And then, Peter Nab. And it was his goal to attend every MLB stadium across the country. And so we helped him do that. And it was, to watch a Guardians take on whatever the other team was. And so we helped him do that. And those kind of stories to me just like make me remember the good of sports and the power of sports. So those are usually like my favorite, like tug on the heartstrings ones, and the ones that aren't flashy and don't get a lot of like recognition.
I love that. I love Peter. This is a tricky one, because you talk about like a favorite project you worked on, but I'm going to lead toward Tara's take here, where it's like maybe the most impactful project you worked on. And when I think about that, you realize, and you go back into sports, and you remember the first concert you ever went to with your mom, or the first ball game you ever went to with your uncle or your dad. And those feelings, and you remember, it's like just this primal, you remember the smell and the hot dogs and the grass and the way the sun felt on your face. Well, in Vegas, there was a really unique one. And actually, both of you happened to be there during this time. But it was the worst shooting in U.S. history, right? 500 people get shot, right? Okay, that's pretty catastrophic. Now, we're tasked with creating the greatest show in Las Vegas, And 9 days after this tragedy happens. So we're like I said, we're gonna have an Elvis and we're gonna have a Golden Knight and we're gonna bring live animals on the ice. And then the shooting happens, October 1, 2017. And it's like, oh, okay, hold on. You're talking about pivoting. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, we need to be very respectful. We need to listen and adapt to what's happening. And we just need to like call it what it is. Like Las Vegas needs a moment to breathe and they need this sort of group hug. And this was the moment where I realized like, us in entertainment, it's like, oh, we don't save lives. Like there's brain surgeons and heart surgeons, there's doctors, we don't save lives. But this experience taught me that we do not save lives, but we absolutely enhance lives. And we absolutely will not cure cancer, but maybe for a moment we'll celebrate someone or make them forget they have it for just a second so they can feel some love in their heart. So we have 9 days to turn this thing around. And it was 58 people had died, right? So 500 were shot, 58 had died. And it was a moment where we brought Vegas together. It was kind of the first event after the tragedy where people got together. And it was just such a responsibility I hope no one ever has to feel again. And I definitely don't want to do this again. But it was like kind of success or fun. It wasn't that. It was just impactful and it leaves a legacy of the heart in that community. And so everyone's there. And you're about to introduce this brand new team, and you have the moment of silence with 58 names on the ice because you have to acknowledge what's happening. You have to tell their story. You got to let the city's heart heal. And then we did this one thing that I was really, really proud of. And it was, normally you would be like, at left wing, your new goal, or left wing, number 18, Tara Hewit, and you do this. And maybe you'd have a youth skater skate with them or something like this. But we flipped it that night, and it wasn't about the Vegas Golden Knights. And this created an indelible relationship and mark with that community. We made it about the community. So instead of introducing Marc-Andre Fleury, one of the greatest goalies of all time, we introduced Sarah Jones, registered nurse who saved 75 people that night. And she's escorted by, I get chills still when I talk about this, she's escorted by Marc-Andre Fleury. So we flipped the script on who the heroes were, and we had our cast of characters as complete supporting characters. And so the whole pregame was dedicated to the heart, the community, those that were lost, those that were affected in that space. And then once the game started, oh my God, divine intervention, scored 3 goals in the first period. And there is no greater release of pain to joy than the sound of the home team goal horn when that goes burn and music's playing and you just felt this wash of we can celebrate for a second. For a second, we can just suspend the sadness and just enjoy this moment. And that was the moment, and I could talk about this one for a long time, so I'll keep it short. That moment was where I saw okay, we're not saving lives, but we are really enhancing it and we're lifting up spirits in a way that's way bigger than how many likes you got or how many streams or touch points or impressions you got. It's longer and bigger than what you could really ever imagine. So that was kind of the most impactful one that we did. So yeah.
I just want to add to that though. You know how Jonny did the hero and the heel. The heel that night was the Arizona Coyotes.
It was Lamont's team that night.
There was no way in the world the hero was looking over the shoulder. They just steamrolled. So it was like there's no way in the chance. We're not winning this one. So
hockey gods were good to us. They weren't going to let that happen.
While we're on the Vegas topic, Jonny, let me ask you a question about that because obviously the Golden Knights, I do feel like were the most prominent one to kind of first break the mold of traditional opens and, the way the game presentation was there. There have been creative videos and things like that, but there's full-on theatrics going on the ice there. And I remember when we first started working with you guys on that, there was an excitement, but the preseason games that first season did not all sell out. Mm-hmm. I remember taking an Uber, when we first got there to work with you guys a month before and talking to the Uber driver and being like, are you guys excited about the Golden Knights? And he was like, yeah. We're excited about the Raiders, though. But hockey, I don't know. And now it's one of the biggest success stories in all of sports. Yeah. Being there from the beginning and being one of the first people on board to do it, were you always confident that it would work, or did you have your moments of doubt?
No way. No. Again, I was in Cleveland working for WWE. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a wife who likes to gamble. And we're living in Cleveland, Ohio, right? Great place to live. And a former colleague from the Cavs is now the president of the Vegas Golden Knights. And he's like, hey, Greco, do you want to move out to Las Vegas with your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old, and your wife who likes to gamble and create a show that the Strip would be proud of? And I was like, was I confident that I could do that? No. Was I confident in the effort I would give? Yes. Was I confident in building a team of incredible creators? Yes. That hopefully could hit the mark. Was I confident that the WWE experience taught me and unpeeled things I didn't know? They unearthed these storytelling lessons I didn't know, partnered with the years I'd had with other sports and leagues. Yes, I was confident that I was going to give it a swing. And so I was terrified, but there's that fine line of like when you're really, really scared, there's also that greatness that happens right past it, right? You don't enjoy yourself walking up the mountain, but once you're at the top of the mountain, you're pretty happy. So I did not have confidence in like, we're going to hit these marks because they seemed crazy. But with all of that being said, there are incredible shows in all of sports. Some of the most inspiring things we've ever seen are minor league sports with very low budgets, right? And sometimes it's fan driven and there's not even like audio or video to support it. When the team wins, it gives you an unfair advantage. So Vegas, we were doing cool stuff all year. We were doing corny stuff all year. We made a ton of mistakes and we had leadership that was okay for us to fail forward and program to fail and experiment with things. But when the team started winning, everyone started to watch, right? If the team doesn't win, I may not be up on this panel. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately. So we told great stories, but that's kind of the negative of the sports is you really are following the lead of what the outcome is of the game sometimes. And that part can be a little bit difficult, but it all came together in that way. But yeah, I would never be like, yeah, I knew it was going to happen. Like that's not how that works at all.
Winning does make everything better.
Makes everything better.
Makes everything better.
Absolutely. All right, well, you talk about the wild ideas of Vegas, and I want to ask, and Lamont, you can start off and we'll go on the row here.
Oh, yeah.
What is the wildest idea for a story or a concept that you guys have had that never saw the light of day that you can share with us?
Oh, that's, yeah.
Oh my gosh. You kind of asked me this before we got started, and I'm drawing a blank because there's so many. Like one, what can I share? Come back. Let's yeah. I got to tee it up for you too.
I think there's probably two, and I don't know if these fit into like wild ideas, but there's one that I'm still determined to make work, and it involves a hot air balloon. So
Whoa,
we're gonna
tell
make
us more.
We're gonna make a hot air balloon work.
Sounds fun.
Like I want a team branded hot air balloon. But I think the second one, and I don't think this is like wild ideas, but I think when people ask about like the Guardians name branding, and a lot of people have like for sure you guys were thinking about this, like for sure you had a list of names, and I'm like, I wish we did, but no, we did not. And so we, at the beginning of the process, we sat down and we put together a list. I think it was over 2,000 names, and hopefully that list will never see the light of day, because we went through and named, what are all of the native trees to Ohio? What are all the native fish in Lake Erie? Like, they were just terrible. Like, we should never have, like, why would we ever name a major league team this? So hopefully that list will never, hopefully somebody has burned it or it's deleted from the software.
Some of the bad ideas, though, I think it flexes the creative muscle. I think it's good practice either way. Like, we've left so many things on the drawing board, or again, the Disney, they call it off the wall ideas, was like the ones where like, this is too crazy, we're taking it off the storyboard wall. I'll go back to Vegas because we really did some weird things, but there were some weirder ones we didn't do. And so traditional playoffs that year one is you have round one, we played the Los Angeles Kings. WWE lessons, good guy, bad guy. We took down the Kings. So every pregame show with ice projection and live performances on ice, we would beat the King, take the King down, right? Next round, we play the San Jose Sharks. And we literally had an image of our Golden Knight with like a sword eating a big, it wasn't actually shark, it was tuna, but a big chunk. And he's like, we took down the Sharks. And I think we might have swept them or beat them quickly, but now we're in the Western Conference Final. And now like NBC wants to cover the pregame show. And it's pretty unprecedented. And we stayed true to like, this is not for NBC, this is for our fans in the Fortress. That's the focus. So we knew, we kept our North Star there. But then there were two teams we could have played. And I think this series went to 7 games. So we're ready to go, just waiting for the Winnipeg Jets, an airplane, or the Nashville Predators, like a saber-toothed tiger. And we're like, how? Okay, so we beat Kings, we beat Sharks now. How are we going to take down a tiger And we all know Erin Sequeira. This was her idea. She goes, and she was serious. She's like, let's get a real tiger. Siegfried and Roy were in town. And she's like, and let's get like prosthetic teeth to make it look like a saber tooth. And we're like, we might really do it. We're gonna bring a tiger on the ice. This is gonna be awesome. The night's gonna take. And we're like, okay, well, if that doesn't happen, then we're like, wait, but what about tiger pee? Like if the tiger pees on the ice, we're gonna get in trouble. So then we were like researching large feline diapers. Because you gotta have that, right? So then the other option was if the Winnipeg Jets win, that's an airplane. So how do you put an airplane down there? And you talk about like a juxtaposition, this medieval knight in armor and this F-16 or F-18 that's gonna, attack. It's like, wow, that's kind of cool. So fortunately or unfortunately, the Predators didn't win, so we'll never know how that diaper experiment would go. But the Jets did win. And what we ended up doing was, and it was pretty cool, was the two-dimensional plane force perspective. Now you could spend $300,000 creating a crazy 3D. We had an amazing internal creator who did a 2D force perspective version, story over sexy. Golden Knight is on the ice. The 2D ice projection jet comes out. Mano, here we go. The jet goes, takes off, and then the Knight just holds up his sword, and we had him at his cue where the plane splits in half. We had cryo go off, fireworks go off, the music stung, and it was like just this really cool moment where like this single dude just destroyed a jet and it worked. But I still think the tiger thing would have been cooler, but this one was still okay. Yeah, this was still okay.
I think I'll give one. I think one of the ones that we talked about in Seattle was we talked about everybody thinks that Seattle, it just rains all the time. It doesn't. Fellow Seattleite over there can tell you it doesn't. Okay? But it's we do get a little bit of precipitation. And one of the things that we thought was like, can we bring that atmosphere inside? And we thought like I watched the Drake concert and he had the big kabuki that went all the way around, and we were like, oh, we could have the rain there, but then we could also have mist going over the crowd to make them feel like it's raining. And then like we're bringing in the fog and you feel like you're really like in Seattle. And then as we started to think about it, I was like, but they have the air on and people are gonna catch pneumonia. And
they're coming in from
they're coming in
to
try to come in warm. And there was so many other things that kind of trickled down because it was also during COVID. And it was like, okay, like people in the mask, if you're not, okay, so that went out the door. Yeah. So,
but I'll bet that sparked other great ideas. That's the point,
yes,
right? Like just get them up there, and it may perpetuate other greatness.
We one more. We also tried to put. No, I'm not going to give that one. There's an invention coming. I can't give that one away.
Storytelling after dark. That's for later.
All right, I think these fun stories are a good way to transition to a Q&A. I know we've got a mic in the middle.
Cool.
I will also, knowing we do have limited time, our social media handles up on the board there, so feel free to reach out afterwards.
Please.
We all love to talk about this stuff and love to connect, so definitely feel free to reach out even if you don't have time to go for a question today. And we'll start the questions right now.
Are we on? Hello. It's probably good that I'm first because I'm on the journalism side, and I know y'all are more on the creative, so I can kind of get out of the way so everybody else can play. So my name is Cindy Carter, and I'm a journalism professor at LSU. Go Tigers!
Nice.
And I also run the campus TV station. So you said earlier, when the team wins, everybody watches, right?
Yeah.
So my journalism students, my sports kids, I don't have a problem getting eyes on our product. I mean, all I have to say, all they have to put in the headline is Jaden Daniels, and boom, we get clicks.
Angel Reese.
But my problem with them is they're trying to be good journalists and do the right thing, but they're also college kids, and I'm trying to tell them to be a little edgier, to have a little more fun, because they can do that in sports. And they're kind of caught between either being hardcore, which means dry as toast, good journalism, but dry as toast. Why would I watch that?
Right.
Or they go hard in the other direction, and I'm like, please, dear God, don't do that.
Too shocking, right? Yeah.
So what, as more creatives and production sides of things, what tips would you have for journalists? I'm trying to get them to be more fun, be a little edgier, still be good journalists, but they're lost. So would you have any basic production creative techniques that you could provide that could help them get on their way?
God, what a great question.
It is. You got it?
I can, but I've talked a lot today. I want you guys mix it up.
I mean, yeah, I really don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I just know of the examples.
Yeah.
And Stuart Scott from ESPN was the perfect example of
Cooler than the other side of the pillow.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's you gotta teach them to find that balance. There's I can't think of his name right now. There's a weatherman here in Texas that he'll get songs and he likes to incorporate that into his weather report. You
know what you're talking about? You're talking about characters, by the
Yeah.
way. Where's Cindy, right? Cindy?
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of playing a character for sure. And the ESPN sports anchors, which they're struggling right now, honestly. Like 10, 15 years, it was like, oh my God, you kind of watched to see them. Like I'd say Scott Van Pelt's got it down, but probably finding their authentic self, which you've heard us say a lot, in who they are as a character. And then it becomes like this trust thing, right? Like there's videos that we didn't share, but like when we're directing athletes, they can be pretty vanilla, pretty dry. They're going to give you the baseline stuff. When you earn a trust and a familiarity and you humanize yourself as like, hey, I'm trying to do my job and I want to get people to know you. And athletes today are way smarter on the marketing branding side of like, oh, if you tell my story well, I will make more money. I will be worth more, not just for what I do on the court or the field. So I think there's an element of authenticity and bringing out their own character and then just developing the relationships and trust, because the shock stuff only goes so far. It gets pretty boring. Like there's a substance way before the shock. If you build that up, I think that could be really helpful there too.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, if like finding something that can carry through across your stories, whether it just be one little thing that just feels authentic to yourself, but that can, serve you in the long term, I think is probably one of the easiest ways to like weave in something that's a little edgy, but you still have the whole foundation of, true journalism.
Nice.
That makes me think of, and boom goes the dynamite.
Yeah.
Makes you think of that one. It's
I
a
think
funny
that's,
clip
that's
if you haven't
taken. That's
seen
probably
it.
copywritten.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to get fined.
Those are all really good. We will have
Thank
about
you for the question. Thank
Yeah.
you.
we will have about 1 minute per question. We're going to try to get as many people as
Oh,
we
got
can.
it.
We're long-winded,
That's
sorry.
a great line. Holy, thanks for asking
So
questions.
the quick
guys.
question I have
Yep.
is how someone like a creator or a documentary filmmaker can approach a franchise and ask them of a way for help to share their story. I'm currently documenting my process of just getting my family to the World Cup in Mexico City because they're from Mexico. They've attended multiple World Cups. Half of our family is no longer with us. And so we kind of want to go together. So I'm just documenting on YouTube, and kind of similar to what the gentleman who traveled around, that was a big inspiration of going to different stadiums. Really quick, I'm not a WWE guy. I did train as a pro wrestler and met my wife at first bump. And so now we actually helped a school locally that was with marketing to get their school up and running for pro wrestling. So
That's awesome.
you're a perfect example, storytelling in pro wrestling. We watch NXT, WWE, like every on WWE, that's our soap opera.
You don't have to like wrestling to understand the
story.
value of the way they tell those
But I learned a
stories.
lot about storytelling, which led me to my pivot of soccer and football. It's growing in the U.S. So what is the best way for someone to approach where they're going? I've just bought tickets. I'm not trying to be a big star or anything. I just want to tell a story.
Yeah.
So how do you approach a president? Do you have to have a pitch? Are they more interested in the numbers that are behind you? Like, I'd much rather approach someone in a year so that I can actually get this thing going versus trying to lay out the whole story.
I think for me, like what makes a difference is when somebody has done their homework on the team or the brand that you're pitching versus just, cold emailing of like, hey, I can help you. And so I think somebody who like has done their homework on our team and is like, how specifically could you help Charlotte FC? But then also knowing like sports teams, a lot of us don't have giant creative departments. A lot of us are very
great point.
strapped. And so I think figuring out like, how could you make our lives easier? Do you already have a story that we can somehow like just easily co-brand? So that's probably my most like
A real short answer too,
suggestion.
like LinkedIn is on fire right now. Like the amount of people who reach out, and not everybody does this. I'm the type of person who like replies to all of it, and the amount of unbelievable creators I met and unpaid interns that I started who now call the show for the Vegas Golden Knights because they cold called me on LinkedIn. That's a way to get into, but I do think the personalization, people have lost that. Like no more to whom it may concern. Like you need to be like, dear Miss Hewit or Tara, like I saw what you did with the Guardians. That was awesome. Like, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. Everyone's favorite name is their own name. Everyone's favorite word is their own name. Like use that, leverage the psychology of like winning them over quickly. And I don't mean to make that sound like super like not respectful, but like stand out in a way that's different. And your storytelling will get there, but you got to get in the door, which is easier and harder than it's ever been before right now. That was
So
way longer than a
congrats-
minute, Ryan. Sorry.
Congrats on all the success in Vegas. San Antonio sold all of our teams to y'all. So I'm a huge Aces and Golden Knights fan because we had the Rampage and the Silver Stars. So
Awesome.
Nice.
Asia Wilson's one of the best ever. I love her. Awesome. Thank you for the question.
Hey guys, I'm Connor, head of creative partnerships with
Hey, Connor.
Clip. I think one of the things that when I'm thinking about storytelling and crafting a good story, it requires time, right? It takes time to put together a good story, and then you actually need keep people's attention spans for long enough to be able to tell those stories. How do you guys, and I think one thing that breaks down for me is, you come up with a great plan, and then what that plan obviously falls apart when it's like, okay, how do I turn that into a TikTok, or how do I get that into a series of tweets that will actually tell this story over the course of the next 2 months, especially in the sports world where things are so time sensitive. So like Tara, to give your Guardians example, as soon as you guys drop that name, there's all the people that came out. Well, they'll always be the Indians, right? How do you sort of drown out that noise, come up with a game plan and a story, and like be able to react dynamically and handle all the time sensitive stuff?
Yeah, I think for me, it's knowing like you're gonna have to do those quick turn, just content things just to satisfy people's need for content and scrolling. And that's fine, and just making sure that those are aligned with your brand, but identifying like what are the ones that we need to make sure this story breaks through, and that it does take a little bit more time, but you also got to like hurry up and go. But so you just got to find a way to like make sure it feels authentic, and making sure that you are identifying like we need this story to resonate. We need this story to make a bigger impact. But it is one of those things where it's like, okay, we have this full video. How do we break it down into a 15-second TikTok? How do we break it down to a Twitter series? Which I think sometimes can dilute the story, or it can be additive. Like maybe it's not just taking this video and crunching it to 15 seconds. Maybe it's the preview to the video, or maybe it's like, a post, like something of the video.
And it's tricky because at the foundation, you want the story to be there. I got the beats, act 1, act 2, act 3. This is how I want people to feel, whether it's in 26 characters or however many characters, or a 10,000 word essay. I just had the honor of working at the NBA All-Star game, and it was like, we're writing for TBD. And then we find out it's Spike Lee. It's like, okay, you got to change it. We didn't change the story of what we were doing. We just changed the tone of how he may be speaking. So I think at the core of it goes back to that authenticity and what do you want people to feel and know. And then you may need to be really nimble on some things as things pivot, but you stay true to what you're trying to make people feel. And I think that helps.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Hi.
Hey,
I'm
lower that
Lauren.
mic.
I am actually a professor of sports communication, so appreciate the academic side there at Emerson College in Boston. And in the beginning of your session, you talked about all of the up and coming things, right? There's AI, there's gambling, there's fantasy sports, there's all of this stuff coming up. I often find my students getting blindsided by the what's next coming up and figuring out where should I be going based on that? So what advice would you give to kind of this up and coming generation of creatives in the media space, storytelling? Would you say dabble a little bit in all these areas, or kind of find something you're good at, stick to it? Just what advice would you give with all of the new shiny stuff coming out?
That is such a good
That's
question.
such a great question.
How much time you got?
We could spend forever talking about AI.
LB,
I can just say, I mean, I know I can get squirreled a lot. My family knows I see shiny things, yes. But at the core of it, you have to go back to the basics, and it's that foundational story of like, what's the end goal? How do you want to tell that story? And then you actually go into the shiny things on how do you present that story. But you got to start with story first. You can't go with the sexy first. And you have to, it's a lot. You got to pull it back though, and just say to them, okay, yes, you can tell a story with all of these things because these are just tools.
Yes, that's
what's the story?
Yeah, those are all like additives,
Yeah.
but you still need like your foundation. And I think dabbling in everything is great.
I think you have to do it. You have to be nimble. You have to adapt. Things are changing all the time. You're like, AI is the devil. Yeah, whether it is or not, it's happening. Learn how to use it to work for the stories you want to tell and the experiences you want to create. There's ways to leverage that. So we could talk about this forever. It is tough. It is a tough time to be a creator, but it's also the best time ever. Because you got to keep your eye on like, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to make people feel? And then what tools can I use to get there? But if you pause, we were talking about this, like, oh, I don't do TikTok. It's like, if we pause too long, we will get passed up very quickly. The last thing I'll say is like, all tech is human. There's an element of humanity to all of this. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to connect. Because you might be a wild, crazy artist in the corner, but if no one really wants to work with you, unless you are like next level creative, you're not going to get the opportunities to team up with people. So as much as you know all of this and you can live behind that screen, you got to be able to engage and pull out energy from people and share energy with people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. But the few of you guys that are left in line, if you want to come up front afterwards, I know they need to get the stage changed over and everything. We're happy to answer. Obviously, come up here or we'll see you guys in the hallway. We can still answer those questions or hit us up on social media. But want to say thank you to everybody for coming today. Hopefully this was fun and a great start to your Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you all.